Cowboy saved 2 Apache girls. What their mother did the next day stunned everyone. The wind whispered through the tall, golden grass of the Montana plains, carrying with it the smell of smoke and sorrow. The horizon burned in the distance, the flames dancing violently against the orange sky. Jack Callahan tightened his reins and squinted beneath the brim of his hat, his heart sinking at the sight. He was a lone cowboy, a man of the open range, the kind who had seen enough loss to recognize the difference between a campfire and a tragedy. His horse, Dusty, snorted as the scent of burning wood grew thicker. Jack urged him forward. The smoke was rising from an old wooden cabin near the base of the valley, a place he'd passed before but never stopped at. He didn't know who lived there, but what he heard next froze his blood cold, the faint, panicked cries of children. "Hold on!" he shouted as he spurred Dusty into a gallop. When he reached the cabin, the fire had already chewed through the roof. The door was half hanging off its hinges, the windows black with soot. Through the noise of crackling flames came the terrified wails again, 2 small voices calling out for help. Jack jumped off the saddle and ran toward the burning cabin. The heat slapped his face, forcing him to turn away for a moment, but he pushed forward. He could barely see through the smoke. He kicked down what was left of the door, coughing as the smoke wrapped around him. Inside, the world was chaos. Flames licking the walls, beams collapsing, embers raining from above. In the corner, 2 little girls stood frozen, clutching each other's hands. They wore dresses made of soft buckskin, decorated with beads and red stitching. Apache. Jack didn't have time to think. He ran to them, wrapped his coat around their small bodies, and scooped them into his arms. "Close your eyes, girls," he shouted over the roar. "Hold on tight." He broke through the smoke, shielding their faces with his arm. The cabin groaned behind him, and as his boots hit the dry earth outside, the roof collapsed with a deafening crash. He turned away from the flames, panting, feeling the girls trembling in his arms. He carried them away from the burning wreck until they reached the edge of the prairie. He laid them down gently on the grass, checking them over. They were covered in soot, their faces streaked with tears, but they were alive. Both stared up at him, too scared to speak, until the smaller one whispered through trembling lips, "Mama." Jack looked back toward the fire. There was no sign of anyone else, just the ruin of a home being swallowed by the wind. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said softly, brushing the ash from her cheek. "Ain't nobody else made it out?" The older girl, maybe 7 or 8, looked up at him with defiance. "Mama will come," she said firmly, her voice shaking. "Mama never leaves us." Jack didn't argue. He wrapped them in his blanket, built a small campfire nearby, and gave them water from his canteen. As the night deepened, the flames from the burned cabin faded into glowing embers. He sat by the girls, listening to the coyotes howl across the dark prairie, wondering who their mother was and what kind of world these children had just lost. When dawn came, the girls were still asleep. Jack was leaning against his saddle, hat tilted low, when he heard the sound of hooves. He stood quickly, hand on his revolver, his eyes narrowing as a lone rider approached from the ridge. It was a woman, tall, strong, and fierce. Her hair was braided with feathers, her dress the same buckskin as her daughter's. Her eyes, dark as the storm, locked on him like daggers. She slid off her horse without a word, her boots landing softly in the dirt. The little girls woke with a start and ran toward her, crying out, "Mama!" The woman knelt, gathering them into her arms, clutching them tightly as tears streaked her cheeks. Jack took off his hat and stepped back, not wanting to intrude on something sacred. But then her gaze lifted, cold, fierce, and full of something he couldn't quite name. "You saved them," she said in a low, steady voice. Jack nodded. "Found them in that cabin. Fire took it down fast. I'm sorry if anyone else was inside." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the blackened remains in the distance, then back at him. "Their father built that cabin," she said quietly. "He died trying to protect it." There was a long silence between them, the kind that carries both gratitude and pain. Then she rose, placing her daughters behind her, and stared hard into Jack's eyes. Why would a white cowboy risk his life for Apache children? Jack hesitated. He'd been asked many things in his life, but never that. "'Cause they were children," he said simply. "Didn't matter who they were." For a moment the woman said nothing. Her eyes softened slightly, though her expression remained guarded. Then she turned to her horse, lifted something from the saddle, and walked back to him. It was a small leather pouch, decorated with beads and feathers. "You will take this," she said, "for saving what is most precious to me." Jack shook his head. "I don't want payment, ma'am." "It is not payment," she replied firmly. "It is a promise. One day you will need help, and when that day comes, the spirits will remember this gift." She pressed the pouch into his hand, then mounted her horse again. With her daughters in front of her, she looked down at him one last time. "You have done a good thing, cowboy," she said. "But good deeds carry weight. Be ready for what follows." Jack watched as they rode away into the golden morning light, their figures disappearing over the ridge. He stood there for a long while, turning the pouch over in his hand, feeling the strange energy that seemed to pulse from it. He didn't yet know that saving those two little girls would change his life forever. And what their mother would do the next day would leave an entire town stunned to silence. Before the screen fades, Jack's voice echoes softly. If you believe that one good act can change everything, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join me for the next part of this story. Because sometimes redemption rides in unexpected saddles.